Hello, and welcome back, my mythy darlings, to the Mythical Madam. Or, if you're new here, hi, I'm June, and thank you for joining me. This is your cozy little corner on the internet for all things mythology, legends, and the beautifully chaotic drama of ancient stories. Welcome to episode 6. And I still can't believe what started out as an idea in my head has now grown into something I get to share with you. Whether you've been here since episode 1 or you're just tuning in now, thank you. It means the world to me that you're here with me. Welcome to the Mythical Madam, my little corner of the internet where we sip on a bit of curiosity and wander into the eerie, the haunting, and the beautifully strange. So if you're ready for a little chaos, a little darkness, and yes, plenty of my unsolicited thoughts along the way, get cozy and settle in wherever you are. Welcome to the Mythical Madam podcast, where we share the myths, the mysteries, and oh yes, the mess. This show was created for you, for me, for everyone and anyone as a way to escape the noise of everyday life, to sit with the strange, the forgotten, and the utterly bizarre stories that somehow still say so much about who we are. And if you ever needed a break from your own chaos, same. Welcome, you're at the right place. Before we dive in a quick content note, this episode includes references to coercive behavior and sexual themes that may be uncomfortable for some listeners. If you're not in a space to hear that today, please feel free to skip or return when you're ready. Your well-being matters to me and always comes first. Thank you. Also, just another quick disclaimer. Everything I'm sharing is based on historical research, ancient texts, mythological retellings, and a healthy dose of interpretation. Mythology to me is basically one ancient group chat full of half-truths, dramatic rewrites, questionable decisions, and a bunch of people arguing about who did what. This is just one of those versions, and that's the part of what makes it so endlessly strange and fun. And sometimes, let's be honest, really uncomfortable and a little unhinged. Now, today's story is hands down the most unhinged myth I've told so far on this podcast, and that's saying something. It's about a man who had everything: royalty, redemption, a literal seat at the gods' table, and still managed to ruin it all by falling in love with a cloud. You've heard that correct, a cloud. Let's get into it. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Before Ixion became a celestial caution sign and regret trailing behind him, he was just a man. A king, in fact. A real one. Crown, throne, loyal subjects, the whole ancient Greek dream package. He ruled over the Lappites, a legendary tribe in Thessaly, Greece. And on paper, he had it all. Wealth, reputation, royal authority, and even a shiny new marriage. But Ixion had one fatal flaw. He thought he was above it all and untouchable. Rules were inconveniences, and consequences were just suggestions. And when you live like nothing applies to you, eventually, something does. Because at his own wedding feast, in the middle of celebrating his union with his new bride, he murdered his father-in-law right there at the banquet table. Imagine the scene. Lyra is playing in the background, almost being passed around, and Ixion deciding this was the perfect time to settle a petty score about dowry money with bloodshed. And in ancient Greece, this wasn't just a bad vibe, this was a full-on sacred violation. Hospitality, or xenia in Greek, was more than just good manners. It was divine law protected by Zeus himself. So when you betray a guest or a host, you're not just insulting a person, you're challenging a god. Ixion didn't just commit murder, he desecrated a bond that gods held sacred. So they exiled him, which, let's be honest, was merciful. But the fallout was fast and brutal. No kingdom would offer him refuge, no priest would purify his name. He became cursed, spiritually a red flag. A man whose sins were so big, so bold, and so disrespectful that no one wanted to risk the divine fallout. He was alone, rejected, and haunted by the consequences of his own ego. Ixion wandered and wandered, and that's when Zeus looked down from Olympus and made a decision that would change everything. So at this point in the story, Ixion wasn't just a cautionary tale, he's the human version of a giant blinking sign that says absolutely not, just all kinds of nope. He's cursed, he's exiled, he's been dropped faster than a hot potato, not just by his in-laws, but by entire kingdoms. His name became a liability. Why? His downfall wasn't just about bloodshed, it was about mythic scale arrogance. He broke the kind of sacred bond that even the gods took seriously, and once you burn that bridge, there's no rebuilding. People feared him, not because he was powerful, but because he was cursed by proximity. A walking red flag with royal baggage and a sign of divine wrath, and in the ancient world, that was a deal breaker. So Ixion wandered through cities that slammed their gates shut, past temples that turned their torches off. He was a man with no home, no allies, and no name worth mentioning anymore. The former king of Thessaly, now reduced to sleeping wherever the shadows fell. On the bridges, behind shrines, beside sheep pens, it wasn't just exile, it was erasure. And in a story that's already overflowing with bad decisions, you might think this might be where the reflection part kicks in. That he might look back and go, maybe stabbing my way through a wedding wasn't the move. But nope, introspection, as you know, was not his forte. And just when it looked like he might fade into obscurity, Zeus intervenes. Why? Well, your guess is just as good as mine. Maybe the king of gods were bored, maybe he saw potential, or maybe Olympus just needed a new example of what not to do. Either way, Zeus does the unthinkable. He shows mercy. He reaches down, lifts Ixion from the gutter, and invites him into the halls of Olympus, offers him food, immortality's finest wine, a seat among the gods themselves. It's the divine equivalent of taking a disgraced king and handing him a front row throne, not as punishment, but as a second chance. And for a brief, sparkling moment, it seems like Ixion's luck has finally turned around, a comeback, just written in stars. Except Ixion doesn't do gratitude. He doesn't do lessons. He does sabotage. And what happens next? Even Olympus didn't see coming. So Ixion's up in Olympus now, eating divine feasts, sipping ambrosia, probably get a little tipsy on immortality vibes, right? He's living the literal god dreams. And you would think, you would hope that he'd be like, wow, thank you so much, Zeus. I will be good now. I will keep my head down. I will be a good person. I will not ruin this. Yeah, you would think that, right? Instead, Ixion looked around in the sparkling halls of Olympus at the shimmering gods and goddesses around him, and then he made, I'm not exaggerating here, the worst decision of his life. He caught the sight of Hera, queen of the gods, wife of Zeus, literal goddess of marriage, loyalty, and dignity. And Ixion thought to himself, you know what would be fun? Hitting on the queen. I mean, that man got 1 second chance. One. And he immediately shoot his shot at Zeus's wife, the goddess who invented the concept of holding a grudge. Bold strategy, my dude. Now Hera noticed, because she's not just a goddess. She's basically the OG of I see everything and I don't forget anything. But instead of blowing up the scene, instead of launching him into outer space right then and there, Hera went to Zeus and was like, honey, you seeing this clown? And Zeus, who was somehow feeling extremely petty that day, said, no, let's have some fun with this. And Zeus, king of the gods and king of drama, crafted a trap. He made a cloud, a perfectly misty, magical replica of Hera, and set it right in Ixion's path. And Ixion saw this cloud Hera and didn't question it even for a second. Not, why is Hera standing there all alone in a fog? Not, why does she look slightly translucent? Nope. Ixion looked at the cloud and said, say less. He slept with the cloud. He made love to water vapor. That man saw atmospheric moisture and thought, yup, time to risk it all. And somehow, this wasn't even the worst part. Because from that very questionable encounter, something was born. We'll get to that in a minute. Alright, so Ixion has now crossed every single possible line. He murdered his own family. He's forgiven by Zeus, invited into Olympus, and repaid all of that generosity by sexually assaulting what he believed was the queen of the gods. Impressive levels of poor decision-making, my dude. We don't see craftsmanship like that every day. And Zeus has had it. He wasn't just mad. He wasn't even just humiliated. He was ready to make Ixion an example no one would ever forget. So Zeus invented something new. Not death. That would have been too easy. Not banishment. Been there, done that. Not even turning him into some weird animal, which, let's be honest here, was Zeus's favorite punishment. No, this one called for a spectacle. He created a massive, flaming, spinning wheel the size of a chariot, forged from celestial brawn and pure divine fury. A wheel that blazed like the sun but never burned out, and he strapped Ixion to it, arms stretched, legs bound, body locked in place. Not ceremoniously, not gently, not symbolically. Zeus didn't just toss him into the wheel, he bound him with fire, with lightning, and the weight of divine punishment. And then the wheel turned. It spun once, then again and again. Faster, hotter, louder. Through clouds, across skies, over mortal lands where people could only catch flashes of flames cutting through the heavens and wondering what kind of wrath was being unleashed. Ixion didn't scream, he howled, because this wasn't pain he could rationalize. This wasn't punishment he could endure. This was divine retribution on repeat. No escape, no end, no mercy. He became a constellation of agony, a flaming reminder that Olympus might grant you mercy once, but if you spit on it, they'll turn your penance into a spectacle. So yeah, imagine the worst case of motion sickness you've ever had while being set ablaze in zero gravity forever. No breaks, no rest, just fire and momentum and the knowledge that you did this to yourself. Because here's the thing, in Greek mythology, punishment isn't about justice, it's about memory. It's about making you remember for all time why you're suffering. Ixion became the poster child of cosmic cause and effect. The original actions have consequences. That if you find yourself thinking, surely they'll let that slide, just look up. That flaming wheel overhead, that's the mythological version of a hard no. But wait, if you think Ixion's story just ends here, you haven't heard what happened to the cloud baby yet. So Ixion's out here, twirling through the cosmos like a tragic rotisserie chicken. Forever spinning, forever sizzling, forever a cautionary tale strapped to a flaming wheel of his own making. But Zeus's little revenge plan? Oh no, it wasn't quite over. Because, this is mythology. And in mythology, when the gods clap back, they do it with flair, pettiness, and generational consequences. So let's rewind for a second. Remember that magical hera-shaped cloud Zeus made to test Ixion's loyalty? Or more accurately, to confirm just how spectacularly unworthy he was of it? Yeah, that cloud, the one that Ixion assaulted, it didn't just dissipate back into the heavens like a fog machine after a school play. That cloud got pregnant. Yep, that's where we are. Take every law of nature and physics you know and just toss it off Mount Olympus. Because mythology doesn't care about the biology textbook. It doesn't care about logic. It cares about poetic irony and narrative revenge. So, from this deeply uncomfortable and non-consensual encounter, the kind that should have ended with a restraining order and a smiting, that cloud gave birth to a being called Centauros, half human, half cloud, and fully cursed. He wasn't born into a silver spoon in his mouth, or like a thunderbolt in his DNA, and Centauros, understandably, grew up a little turbulent. Not a philosopher, not a peacekeeper. Centauros grew up with a chip on his shoulder and vibes inherited straight from the man who caused his existence, Ixion himself. And what did he do with that brooding storm cloud energy? He started a legacy. He fathered the centaurs. Yes, those centaurs, the half-man, half-horse creatures, galloped into Greek myths like they just downed 5 amphoras of wine and forgot they had temple duty in 10 minutes. The original horse bros, loud, reckless, and always shirtless, known for their epic bras, terrible impulse control, and talent for showing up to every divine event they weren't invited to. Let's take a moment to connect the mythological dots here. 1. Ixion assaults a cloud he mistakes for Hera. 2. Cloud gets pregnant. 3. Gives birth to Centauros. 4. Centauros became the chaotic baby daddy of an entire species. And now we have stumbling centaurs through Greek mythology like hungover mascots at the wrong parade. Seriously, the centaurs were everywhere. One minute they're dragging poor Hercules into a bar fight. Next minute they're galloping through wedding feasts, breaking tables, and trying to flirt with anything that moves. They're like the drunk family members of Greek mythology, the ones who somehow always ruin the vibe but somehow never disappear from the family tree. So, the next time you see a centaur in a movie, think gallant, noble, muscles glistening, hair flowing. Just remember, that's Ixion's legacy, a cloud-born disaster whose descendants can't even hold their liquor. And the wildest part, all of it spiraled from one man who couldn't accept a second chance, a man who turned forgiveness into fear. The betrayal, the divine setup, the wheel of fire, the birth of a new species. It all started with a man who couldn't sit with his own guilt, who couldn't be accountable, who refused to reflect, who saw consequences as a challenge instead of a checkpoint. So let's sit on that thought for a moment. Ixion's story is wild. Like, come on, the man seduced a cloud. There's a flaming wheel involved. And we have centaur babies. It's chaotic, it's kind of hilarious, but it's also kind of sad. Because at the heart of it, this is a story about a man who was given a second chance and have absolutely no idea what to do with it. Zeus didn't have to forgive Ixion. He didn't have to lift him up from exile, didn't have to bring him up to Olympus, didn't even have to offer him the rarest kind of grace, a full reset, a clean slate. But instead of receiving that with humility, Ixion saw as permission, as entitlement, as proof he could get away with more. So maybe that hits a little close to home, because haven't we all, at some point, been handed something we didn't quite deserve, a second chance at love, a job we weren't ready for, a moment of trust we weren't sure that we earned? And what we do with those moments, it does matter. It's easy to fall into a trap thinking maybe a second chance isn't proof that we were right all along. But the truth is, it's an invitation not to repeat old patterns, but to grow out of them. Ixion didn't rise to the occasion. He reached for more. Because when you believe the world owes you something, even a gift can feel like a challenge. So maybe Ixion's story isn't about betrayal or pride or clouds. Maybe it's about what we do when someone chooses to believe in us again. A reset isn't a reward, it's also a responsibility. And the difference between failing and rising often comes down to whether we recognize the difference. So what did we really just witness here? A wedding gone wrong, a crime against sacred law, a man who got the rarest kind of forgiveness and set it on fire. Ixion's tale just isn't about downfall. It's about what happens when someone confuses mercy with permission and when they treat a second chance like a second opportunity to do even worse. And that's the part that kind of sticks with me, and I think about this because second chances are sacred, right? They're not proof that we deserve more. They're reminders that someone somewhere still see potential in us to grow. And sometimes the hardest part of growth isn't recognizing what we've been given in that kind of grace and choosing to answer it with humility instead of hunger. Ixion just couldn't. He looked at the gods and saw a loophole, not a lesson. And for that, his name is now pinned to a flaming wheel, a cosmic warning for the rest of us. But you, my friend, you're here, listening, reflecting, laughing through the chaos with me. And that tells me something important. You're not running from the wheel, you're learning from it. Next episode, we enter a different kind of story. Quieter, but no less powerful. We step away from punishment and retribution and move towards something gentler, stranger, something that doesn't scream for reverence, but earns it anyways. There's a God who doesn't sit on a throne, doesn't demand worship with thunder or fear. He protects differently. He moves through myth, not as a conqueror, but as a presence, soft-footed, big-hearted, ancient, and playful. He has no temples in his name, but he's present where it matters, in rooms where evil tries to creep in the quieter moments where fear stirs, and in the laughter that pushes it back. He won't look the way you expect a god to look, but he's not here for appearances. He's here to guard the thresholds with rhythm, with dance, with a grin that dares the dark to try anything. He's not loud, but he's not small. And where joy lives loud enough, he stands watch. We'll meet him soon. His name is Bass. And something tells me you'll never forget him. I'm June, and this is the Mythical Madam, and I'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this episode, please let me know and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And make sure to leave your comments if you're listening on Spotify. Don't miss out on a single episode. Episodes dropping bi-weekly, so make sure to subscribe on the show on Substack at Mythical Madam and my YouTube channel. The Mythical Madam is produced and edited in partnership with Andy Lara at sunfacemedia.com. I'm incredibly grateful for the collaboration and support in bringing these stories to life. All of this and more linked in the show notes. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.